That's what he said.
That's not what he said.
That wasn't a direct. Are you his interpreter or are you his vice president? Come on.
We do have to strike a balance, of course, between enforcing our laws. We don't want to dehumanize people. We inherited an affordability problem. We're doing a lot to make it better. It's going to take a little bit of time. There's a lot more work to do. I am, frankly, kind of a conspiracy theory on the Epstein stuff. The affordability problem. Again, gas, way too high right now. Certain things way too high. We believe everybody, whether you're black or white or rich or poor, deserves to live in a safe neighborhood. I think everybody is welcome in our political coalition. Frankly, even if you didn't vote for us, everybody is welcome in our country so long as you're an American citizen with the duties and the legal obligations and rights to be here.
Jonah Goldberg. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
This is someone who, well, there's a very online version of J.D. Vance. There was a version of J.D. Vance that ran for Senate, someone who was pretty sharp, pretty pugnacious, often in appearances like that. This is a different way of doing it.
Yeah, points for trying. Look, I personally think, and I'm a little annoyed that the conventional wisdom is catching up with me, that J.D. Vance has been the most overrated major politician of the last few years. He underperformed every other Republican when he ran for Senate. He had to get establishment Republicans like Mitch McConnell to help him out, to get him over the finish line. This idea that he is going to inherit Trump's mantle is nonsense. There's not going to be a single mantle. There are going to be a bunch of people running as different kinds of MAGA or MAGA-adjacent people, and probably even some normie Republicans. And I just don't think he's that compelling a character, and he accumulates statements. I mean, my favorite one, which drives me absolutely batty, is, he believes in this heritage American thing, where he at one point said, if you have an ancestor who fought in the Civil War, you just have more say in our politics than someone who just got here. And I always was fascinated by that quote, is because he didn't say which side you had to fight in the Civil War. And he dabbles with stuff, his sort of footsie big tent for neo-Nazis and Nick Fuentes crowd. I think it's based on a really bad political theory. And I just don't think he has got the talent or the path that a lot of people in Washington seem to think he does.
I think, having interviewed him, that he is very adept at speaking to the audience that is in front of him and speaking also to the audience that he wants to hear his message. His things are often very layered, so he will sound very affable in this kind of setting with all these women on The View. It's daytime television. He's trying to sell his book. Pugnacious isn't really...
Not the place or time.
Not the place or time. But at the same time, he knows these clips are going to travel. And so what he'll do is definitely put messages out there that his base, or the people that he wants to be his base, will hear and understand. And so I think he's a defter politician than you give him credit for.
I think he's a defter debater and interview subject. I don't think he's nearly as good a politician as people.
No, he is a code switcher, and I think he is actually pretty adroit at this. And the example of that is the debate, the vice presidential debate. When on either side of it, he was a fire-breathing MAGA guy, and then he gets to the debate, and he's sort of like Mr. Rogers. Why can't we all get along?
And Waltz
didn't know how to deal with that. I mean, he completely tilted.
That was a good strategy. Again,
no, I agree. Listen, first of all, I don't believe J.D. Well, let me say one thing about him saying that he's not thinking about this. I remember some of you maybe none of you are old enough to remember this, but when Clinton was impeached in 98, Dale Bumpers, the former governor and senator from Arkansas, gave the speech, the last speech in the impeachment trial, and he said, whenever anybody says to you it's not about the sex, it's about the sex. Okay? Whenever a politician says to you, I'm not thinking about running for this or that, it's usually he's thinking about running for this or that. And he's certainly thinking about it. But I would take the field against Vance. I don't think Vance is going to run. And honestly, the president just put a pair of concrete overshoes on him when he gave him this choice assignment of trying to sell this Iran deal. Do you think Donald Trump said, I'm not going to go to the signing. I think I'll run back to Washington. J.D. will handle that. You think if he thought this was a winner, he wouldn't be there? Absolutely not. So he's giving Vance a real chore here.
I'll tell you what I love. I love the fact that he walked straight into the lion's den.
I do. I think that was fantastic. He went on The View. He knew it wasn't going to be a friendly audience. He was dealt a lot of hard balls, and I didn't watch the whole thing, but the bits and pieces that I saw, I thought that he did a great job knocking them out of the park. And so keep in mind, most politicians refuse to go into those Lion's Den type environments like that. He walked straight in, and I thought that was.
Well, I'd just say it was a Lion's Den for Kamala Harris as well. I mean, maybe because of her own making, but I mean, the worst clip she had in the campaign was on The View.
It was a cat's den when she went in there, and she still had a hard time with it. But I did wonder about that one quote of his. I don't know if I heard it right, where he said, "Everybody's welcome into our coalition as long as you're a citizen." Isn't that what he said? Did I hear that right?
Yeah, no, that's his basic premise.
And that you're here legally, yes.
And that you're here legally. I mean, it's like everyone's welcome, and then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller who he actually means. That's what I'm saying about the way that he.
He's
wait, no, this is the way. No, but wait a second. I'm just saying the way that
the
he's messaging is always layered, is what I'm saying.
Can